So Amos, I think you absolutely need no introduction to the audience of Kerala. Your work has been seen extensively. Your film has been the opening film at the festival. But more than that, I have to say that you're a dear friend. You're not only a personal dear friend, but a dear friend of the festival. And I can never forget the first time that you came and you had stolen the reels from the archives in, and you carried it in your baggage. And of course, you didn't have any baggage, but the film arrived. And ever since then, it's been, I think that was the third edition of the festival. And now we are on the 25th edition of the festival. So it's a long and very close association. Thank you for always being a supporter and always making such wonderful films that we can show. Thank you. That's really the thing that keeps us going, to have your films, to show them. Yeah, so thank you so much. Thank you for agreeing to this conversation. And I'm happy to introduce Mr. Shaji. Shaji is a well-known journalist and also deputy director of the festival. He will do the conversation for you. He is a great fan of your work and seen all your work. So he was keen to have this conversation with you. So welcome, Shaji. Welcome, both of you. And of course, thank you very much for agreeing to do this.
Oh,
See you,
Dina,
Amos.
it has been a great pleasure always to come to your festival. And seriously, I love the exchange with the public and your persistence in showing films to stimulate thinking. And really, it was always remained, as you know, I've traveled to many, many festivals around the globe in any continent, in New York, in Washington, in Moscow, in Shanghai, in Japan, anywhere. And Trivandrum stayed a strong memory. So it's a pleasure.
Oh, good. Thank you. That's really nice to hear. Thank you for those words, really, because that's what keeps us going. If the filmmaker feels that we are doing something for them, that's what's most important. Yeah. Okay, so I'll hand over to Shaji, who will now take over. Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, Amos.
Hi, Shaji.
Yeah, I'm sure that you may not remember me, but I have interviewed you in 2008 at Trivandrum. When you came for the IFFK in 2008, and it got published also. I will send you a copy. So I'm great. It's a great feeling to see your favorite meet your favorite director after a gap of 12 years, and being able to talk to him again. So. And also, it adds a great pleasure that I just watched your latest film, Laila in Haifa. So it has traveled to festivals, and I'm not saying anything about Amos Gitai, the director, to the audience. I mean, Amos is so dear to the Kerala film audience and those in India. So you are the one director known, bring a lot of autobiographical elements in your films. There are vignettes of your life, incidents, events are later find mentioned or placed in your films. And for all the things, Haifa is the place where you born. And now the film, and the place now finds itself in the title of the film. So tell us how you place this film in Haifa itself.
I don't know what jumped in. Something jumped in here, so I cannot see you.
Oh, okay.
I need to see. Maybe it's this. Do you see me correctly, or?
Yeah, I see you correctly.
Okay. No, after doing so many works, I decided to go back to my hometown and do a homage to Haifa that is the specificity of Haifa among the big cities of Israel. You know, you have obviously Jerusalem with this radiating spiritual presence of the three big monotheistic religions.
Yeah.
Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and the shrines and the power of this site. And then you have Tel Aviv, which is kind of a hedonious contemporary city. And Haifa, I think the specificity that it is a kind of a meeting place of people from different communities, different origin, from Jewish, Arabs, Islamic, Christian, Jewish, Israeli, Palestinian, and other people from other origin. And frankly, you know, I discovered this city, again, my own hometown, when I went to a visit with one of my actresses from my previous film, Tramway in Jerusalem. And she came to me and she said, Amos, you really don't know really your city. I'll take you to a night visit in different clubs in Haifa. And you will see, you will discover a different kind of Haifa. And then we came to this club, which is owned by a Palestinian owner. And I found incredible density and meeting of people from all these origins. And I said, I'm originally an architect. So I say to myself, this is the venue, this is the site that I would like to do my next film. This is the venue. So originally I started with the venue, with the real club, which is in the industrial part of Haifa. So you have, as you see, you have the train always cutting the dialogues and moving back and forth. And so this is really the site where the film is situated. And it was like rediscovering my own town.
Okay. Hello. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you in the film, it's Haifa. It's a gallery. There is a bar, and where people mix. This is a place of different people. So it's like diversity is the keyword here. You mean different kind of people, gay people, straight people, then Christians, Palestinians. There is always, okay, we know that as a filmmaker, you always emphasized on the otherness, not about yourself or oneself. So you had this in mind when you made this film that, we are talking about a need for the recognizing the otherness, tolerating the other. That's what you feel about this film, or bringing this place into this film.
Yeah, because since the Middle East have known so many wars, and some efforts not enough to reach peace, and and you know it also from India when you have conflicts between different religions, different communities.
Exactly. Yeah.
And very unfortunate bloody exchanges. I find that these days, because the politicians, the leaders have not been doing well their work now. They have not, because they have been elected by inciting one group against another, which is an unfortunate thing. So I think that the peace is coming by the quotidien, like the French say, by the day-to-day exchanges. Because we will not wait forever for the politicians to find the final rosy agreement. So we have to insist now on a human exchange, which breaks the barriers, which shows that we are all people. Doesn't matter what is our belief, what is our religion, what is our color, what is our ancestors. So we have to encourage exchanges between people from different origins. And this kind of tissue of the day-to-day life eventually, hopefully, will bring the peace, will bring the larger peace. But we cannot go anymore just believing in following some leaders, because the leaders who could have done it are not there at this point, unfortunately. There are very few leaders on the planet who really are working to advance, to create bridges between people. Since, as I mentioned, my dear friend, that I'm an architect, so, you know, the architect has to build bridges. So the films itself is about creating bridges. So the film, Laila in Haifa, has 18 actresses and actors, Palestinian, Israeli, from all origin. And just by being on this side and relating to each other sexually, intimately, intellectually, in any way, they create some sort of tissue of understanding between each other. And this is really what the film want to tell us through these fragments of episodes.
Yeah, great. As you're mentioning, like, you know, you yourself is an architect. Your father was a great architect. So why did you choose to leave architecture and, you know, choose films to express yourself?
Because you know, my father was a great architect, was an architect at the Bauhaus. He was a student of Kandinsky, of Mies van der Rohe, of the great modernist architects. He came from Germany when Hitler came to power, and the Jews were, you know, the best were arrested and beaten, which was his story. They beat him, they broke his teeth, and he escaped still in time, because otherwise I wouldn't have the pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah.
So he came to Israel, and he was an architect very much dedicated also to the social dimension of architecture, to create housing for simple people, to build the kibbutzim for kind of innovative social arrangements, and so on. So when he died, I was 19 years old. And frankly, between you and me, I did not know even what I should study.
Okay.
I had no idea. So I said, why don't I take the crafts of my father, and I will see later. So I actually became a diploma architect. So if you want the house in Kerala, I can come and design. I have the stamp.
Not a bad idea.
Right. Then I went and did a master and PhD in Berkeley, in California. I got a PhD in architecture. Yeah? And when I ended collecting all the stamps and the beautiful certificate that I'm an architect, I said, now it's time to do something else. And also I felt, because of the Kippur War, when I was part of the Israelis at the Kippur War, and I was shot in a helicopter, and I was shot in my back. So when I came back, I felt that architecture is a bit formal, and that I would like to speak about the destiny of this country. And I started to do all this work, and we spoke with Bina, your wonderful director, that perhaps in a year or two, we are going to, because now there is a big British company which decided to restore 25 films that I did. So maybe in a year or two, when the virus will let us travel, I'll come back to Trivandrum, and we can see the different films. So you understand a bit the way that I go about cinema. But, you know, I think that cinema, like all the great Indian masters, let's say Gatak or Sataji Tray and so on, Ritvik Gatak, tell us it's like you have to do what you have to do. It's not just a marketing object. It's a way of expressing yourself, of sharing with people from different cultures, and so on. So that's the way, the reason I left to go back to architecture, and I started to make movies.
You mentioned about Kipper War. I still remember that film, Kipper. It was very tense. It was very difficult watching that film. The moment, war front, and it was not at all, it was not exotic. It was like kind of very disturbing experience. But at the same time, uh, you went into such subjects, but you're also known as a person who is not making overt political statements. You know, uh, in Kipper we can see many soldiers making nasty comments about very iconic Israeli leaders, but at the same time they are not taking sides or anything. They are not loud political statements, and even to the extent of labeling as pacifist your films. So how do you see the relation between politics and your films in general and in your films?
I would say that all my work is a civic gesture,
Okay.
because I think cinema is a very great medium, because you obviously you have other artistic media, you have the visual arts, you have literature and so on, but it's a civic activity. The best of films, let's say, if I look at Rossellini, or I look at Fassbinder, or I look at great filmmakers, it's I think their first intuition is civic. They want to tell us about the world. And I always like to give the example of a painter like Picasso, that in 1936, we all know the famous painting of Picasso, the Guernica. And the Guernica, which is a painting that he did after the bombardment by the German army of the village in Basque, the Basque village, Guernica. So Picasso, I think it's like his gesture as a citizen, even before being a great painter. So he takes this event, and his medium is painting, and he gives us a very powerful painting. And so you can say that it is a political gesture, but it's also in the art of painting. And then Picasso, also again being a political figure, he decides that the Guernica will never go back to Spain as long as Franco is alive. So he's using what we have with the artist or the filmmaker, whoever rights to sanction politics. He says the painting will go back to Spain only after the death of Franco, the head of the fascist party in the Civil War. And this is what happened. So I think that a lot of the work I do is inspired by real events in Israel, which is a very emotional and powerful and very strong experience, country with all the destiny of Jews in the 20th century after the Second World War, but still building a country, and the contradictions which come. So it's a very moving experience. And I always say that the best homage that an artist can do to his country is to be critical, because we love it. We love it. We want it to be better. It's not because we don't like it.
Yeah.
It's not hostile. It's critical. So, like you very well mentioned, that Kippur is not judgmental. It's not saying we are glorious and otherwise. No, it's about the great waste and the tragedy which the war brings, but it's without hatred. It may be sorrow, but no hatred. So I think that we have to share this experience. And I'll tell you, when the film was shown in the main competition in Cannes Festival, I was very moved that the great Egyptian filmmaker, Youssef Shaheen, was maybe one of the greatest directors of the Arab world, decided to do a personal gesture to me. And he came with all his actors and climbed the red carpet of Cannes together with me. And even if the war was fought between Israel and Egypt and Israel and Syria, he said, this is our language as filmmakers. to cross the borders, to speak to each other. And I had this experience with filmmakers, let's say the great Kiarostami and other filmmakers, that we, the filmmakers, we have to build bridges. We have to talk culturally to another culture. And by doing that, we advanced in a modest way, we advanced the cause of dialogue between people.
Yeah, that's true. And, this, we are talking about, one second, I just. We as a generation have grown up with, we had world icons like, PLO leader Yasser Arafat, Ishaq Rabin as our, icon during our times, during our younger times. So Rabin was later murdered, sadly. So, and you made a great film on that, death of assassination foretold. So, how you think now we are standing at the time, like, everything has changed. All the talk about, it is the issues in Middle East and, between Palestine and Israel, everything has changed, is going to different levels. So how do you see from the present situation in, between the countries?
If if I would have the key to resolve the conflict, I would be delighted. I would be delighted. I think that the arts or cinema, we cannot change the reality. And sometimes people are a bit in a megalomaniac way. They think we do a film and the reality will change. No, the reality has a different pace. It's a different pace. But we still have to talk. We still have to project an idea. We still have to introduce the idea of moderation and of dialogue. I'm saying moderation because, sometimes, let's say, Pol Pot in Cambodia, he goes to the Sorbonne and he hears that it's very good to be agriculture. He goes back to Phnom Penh and he starts to kill everybody who is not a peasant. So the idea is not to come with some sort of shining idea and be a killer, but the idea is really how we can keep the memory that another possibility can happen. This is the main thing. So it's not erased from memory. That what you mentioned, Rabin. So the project of Rabin to reconcile and to find a modus vivendi with the Palestinians is not lost because there is another people in power. So I think that I did the film and I also did the play, and also this year we're going to a big exhibition on the assassination. This is to keep the idea alive because the arts, and this is our strength, even in front of great powers, and this was always in history. So philosophers, artists, painters, and so on, they kept the ideas alive, even when the powers were gone. And sometimes the work of art, if it's a good work of art, not demagogy. That's why, for instance, I'm not so crazy, and just to tell you, I don't like to speak about other works, about Michael Moore, because when Michael Moore is trying to force me for an idea, because let's say I agree with his idea, but I don't like to be manipulated.
Yeah.
Okay? Why do you need to use force? If you start to manipulate, to film George Bush like that, and a bomb here and a bomb there. No, speak to me in a way that you respect me, that I can analyze it with you, I can agree, I can disagree. But so the arts have to say in a patient way and to say what they think without fear, but still without demagogy, without manipulation, without overusing editing and so on. So some films I did, I think you showed it in the festival some years ago, Ana Arabia. It's shot in one shot, 81 minutes, to show that because people asked me when the film got the prize in Venice and was shown, they asked me, Amos, Gitai, why did you do Ana Arabia in a single shot without cut? So I said, you know, the film is about the Jewish-Arab relationship. I don't want to cut the Jewish-Arab relations, so I translate this sentence to the syntax of cinema, so I don't cut. So you have one shot. So we have to use our craft as filmmakers. And I think that if we work well on the idea of the memory will stay in the mind of people. And at some point, maybe beyond even our short passage on this beautiful planet, it will come back. To go back to Picasso, you know, so the Guernica went back to Spain, and when it went back to Spain, and then now last year, the Prime Minister of Spain decided to take Franco and to take him out from the Kitsch mausoleum, to take his bones out. Okay, and you ask yourself, why did he decide it? There's more urgent problem, economic and so on. It's only because of the memory of political militants and writers and filmmakers who kept the memory that Spain can be a different country. Only because of that. There is no pragmatic issue about it. So I think that filmmakers who do this work to keep memory as an active agent in change is essential work. So sometimes, like you started, my dear, in our conversation, you said biographical. So sometimes I speak about my mother, my father, the architect. Now we did in New York and in Paris, the reading of the letters of my mother, who was born in Israel, in Palestine, and she passed away. But in this, she portrays a place. So by keeping memory, you also make, it's not just sentimental, it's also a proposition. By keeping an idea that you can have a human society from different origin, different desire, different projects. Also in disagreement, it's okay. People can disagree, they don't have to disagree. But don't kill. Don't waste all the resources. Don't use demagogy. When you use it in this sense, you are advancing understanding in a modest way.
Yeah, like, so you're basically, we are saying that, you know, the artist has to keep asking questions. They need to keep asking questions. Whether you belong to a particular country, to whatever be the case, you need to ask questions. But at the same time, also at this, in these times of social media, it has become very difficult for people who has a different point of view. Like, you know, the other becomes, the existence of the other is very difficult nowadays. I'm sitting in India and I'm talking from my own country's present situation, and that's a general trend in all over the world. As you say, the exchanges became more violent, you know, reactions became. So how do you think in this kind of social media, the expression through the film medium of cinema,
You know,
or have you seen changes over all these years?
I'm sure you know, I don't have Facebook, I never had. I don't have Twitter, I don't do Instagram, so I don't do it. Okay? So
Good.
I don't do it because of the reasons that you said, that I'm not interested all the time to be on the internet, although I'm pretty satisfied with the level of exposure.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm not hostile to technology because we could have our conversation also thanks to technology. So I'm not saying, you know, we have to go to the well to take water. There are some, humanity needs some steps forward, but we have to be prudent with technology. I mean, it's not a surprise that the biggest prize on the planet, Nobel Prize, you know, the money come from the guy who invented the explosions. So he created death, and then he felt that he has now to support knowledge. So I'm saying that the attitude to technology should be prudent, but also it's potential, you know, and we'll see what this virus does in terms of reshifting the way of people think. We'll see. It's in some way it's also a revolt of the planet against the overactive human being who destroyed all the landscape or destroyed all the natural resources, who are not leaving any heritage to the next generations. So it's almost a rebellion, you can say, in that sense. Obviously, we have to be prudent. So we have to think to see if it will create a real shift in the way that we deal with environment, culture, with works of significance, not just commercial products being pushed very aggressively at us. And I think it's very important to do the kind of activity that you're doing, that Tina is doing for years, and to show people different works which make people think, that open their mind, and because we have to prevail in front of this very powerful and aggressive consumer society. We have to keep the idea that people should think and should show another form of cinema, hear another language, not just English, etc., etc.
Okay, so tell us what you are doing all this during this lockdown, the long lockdown, which I mean, at least this generation hasn't experienced this global pandemic. So you're shut down inside somewhere, or what are you doing?
I'm not flying, okay? And the last flight I took was last March because there was this beautiful event at the Museum of Modern Art that our friend Josh Segal, that last time I met him in Trivandrum, organized at the Museum of Modern Art in New York in March. So he showed a group of films that I did and did the reading of the letters of my mother in New York. But this was March, and I think this was the last event, and then the museum was closed. We managed to get on one of the last flights, but the connecting flight to Israel was already non-existing. And since then, I haven't taken a flight. I'm waiting. It will quiet down, that we'll get vaccinated, all of that. So I've been writing a lot. I finished 2 books. One will be published actually on the assassination of Rabin. One book, one very big book. And another one with my friend Jean-Michel Frodon, the French critic, and some other good thinkers about what is the meaning of archive. What is the archive? Cinema. Well, what is the sense of archive? It's touching some of the questions we spoke today. So I did these 2 things. We're writing some scenarios. I work with other filmmakers. I cannot say that I was not productive, but I think we have to shift the energies to somewhere else. I've been doing some presentations in Japan, in Korea, in New York, so on, like we do today of Laila in Haifa. So it has been quite an active period, and I think we have to be prudent.
Also, just maybe I will come to one of the last questions. Like, tell us, I find your films has a special place for music. That ingredient is there, and especially I remember one film, Free Zone, where this Hadgadiya is played, and especially it's a kind of addictive track. I know many friends who love it, and and especially it becomes all the more charming because of Natalie Portman's face is there in the video. It starts with her sobbing and all those street sounds. Please tell us something about this. Hadgadi is a traditional Israeli music or what?
I think that music, and not just music, even sound or even noise.
Yeah.
It's. I don't think it should have just an illustrative role. I think it is. The beautiful thing about cinema, you have many components. You have set, the place, you have the characters, you have the languages, you have the, and I think that the music or the noise are another form in this juxtaposition, which helps you to interpret. So it's not illustrative, it's not just putting some nice cream, which you have in some movies. They put a nice cream all over the film and so on, but it should arrive punctually and help us to interpret the work itself. So it's a dialogue. For me, it's really about a dialogue between, let's say, the verbal, the performance, and so on, and an element which is musical. And even now, recently, I'm working on some theater works, and so the theater works are done in different ways. When I work on a theater, let's say I did one very big theater piece in October, still this October in Paris, which is a dialogue between several authors, Thomas Mann and Rosa Luxemburg and Gramsci and so on. And so the music is multilingual because you have German and French and Italian and Hebrew and so on. And also you have different musical instruments played live. So I like that there is, that when you hear another element of music, like you mentioned the film I did with Natalie Portman, Free Zone, that hopefully we will show it again if we do some work in the future. So, and I'll speak about it. So this song helps you to interpret. It's not just to consume it, but to interpret. It's also true about the film I did with Jean Moreau, that I did with Juliette Binoche, with other, with Samuel Fuller, with and so on. So I think that the music or the sound is always an element which creates a dialogue with different components in the film, and the ensemble finally what you see.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I wish you a good projection, and I look forward to see you at some date in the future.
Yeah.
Be healthy, because Kerala and Trivandrum kept a strong impression in my mind. So
yeah, we do expect.
Yeah.
We do expect you to be in Trivandrum. See you in Trivandrum sometime soon.
It was a pleasure. Yeah, regards.
Thank you. Bye.